I want to talk to you about this afternoon is looking at mobile workforce and really trying to think about how can we really enable a productive mobile workforce, but also really thinking about security, because we know it's top of mind for most CEOs. So I'd like to put the slide up. Just our world is changing. I think we're all very much aware of that. But in the context of data and the cloud and the opportunities that opens up for organizations. So if you think about the volumes of data that are now being created, and also the move to the cloud, which basically enables organizations to do an awful lot more with that data that they are carrying. So there's huge opportunities, huge scope. It's a very exciting time, I think, to be in business and to be in technology specifically, because there's endless opportunities, and we're all actually living through an era, I suppose, of so much innovation and change. So it's very exciting to see what's next. One of the things we get asked a lot about, though, is while it's fantastic having growth in data, having AI which will manipulate your data, moving your data to the cloud, the top concern that we hear from organisations is around cybersecurity. And in some ways, it's becoming a bit of a blocker. It's very much in the media every single day. We hear of new breaches, new attacks. So it is something that's top of mind for us in Microsoft in terms of solutions that we're developing to support our customers. These are just some of the comments that we'd hear from IT organisations. Basically, what they want to be able to do is they want to be able to enable their workforce to do more, to work from home, to work from multiple locations. They want to be able to use their own devices. But IT have that dilemma between enabling their workforce to do all these great things, but also making sure that both the user is secure, but also the corporate data. So there's a lot of considerations at the moment for, particularly within the IT department. Digital transformation, so I suppose coupled with change, we've been talking about digital transformation now for a number of years. I think most companies in Ireland are at some stage on their journey in transforming their business digitally. The areas that we tend to focus on in Microsoft is we look at 4 key areas within digital transformation. One is about engaging your customers, so looking at new ways to interact and engage with your customers. Transforming your products, obviously using digital capabilities opens up new opportunities to develop your products, optimizing your operations, and then empowering your employees. And today I'm just going to talk about and focus on one, which is empowering your employees, which is the focus of the presentation. So if we start with looking at the evolution of the modern workplace, we actually conducted some research very recently, back in April this year. We published the results about a month ago. So basically, we went out to the market just to kind of understand what's happening in the workplace in Ireland today in terms of a digital culture. And a digital culture is effectively an environment where managers will support their employees with technology to help them basically do a better job, to do a more effective job, and to be more productive. And it was really interesting, the results that came back. 84% of the respondents estimated that they worked in an environment with a weak digital culture. So quite startling in terms of the numbers. But those organisations who had a strong digital culture considered that their employees were twice as productive in terms of their day-to-day lives. So it is something we're hearing an awful lot more about, creating and supporting and embracing a digital culture. I think the other thing we need to think about as well is that for the first time ever, we have 5 generations of the workforce, 5 generations in the workforce today. So if you think of all the variety of needs that those different generations have when they come to work every day, we've all heard a lot about millennials. I'm sure there's probably some sitting here today as well. But all of that needs to be considered, and different requirements and different usages depending on where you are in the generation game. And I suppose another concern as well in the workplace around the generational gaps as well is ensuring that you retain the right staff in your organisations and that you can attract talent. And one of the ways to do that is to provide employees with technology, not only to help them to do a better job, to be more productive, more creative, but also I think people feel proud when they're walking around with a nice, whether it's a nice slim laptop or they can use their own phone, for instance. So all of these things are considerations that employees are making today when they're choosing what company to work for. So there's a lot of considerations. And this list here basically just kind of thinks about, the work of the past and then the modern workplace. I suppose previously we tended to work more either in smaller offices or very much kind of one-to-one, whereas now we're moving much more to collaborative workspaces, working more in teams. Teams is becoming a lot more relevant, a lot more important. And then you have to think about things like how do you share data amongst teams, and all of that becomes more relevant. So I don't want to talk too much about products, but I'm just going to obviously mention Windows 10, which is obviously the operating system for Microsoft. And again, just focusing on empowering your employees and different ways for you to think about how you can make an employee's life more productive, more effective. So the three key areas that I just wanted to cover off are, one is around Windows 10, so basically looking at simplicity, so keeping things simple, easy, both from an IT manager's perspective, but also from the employee's perspective. Security, which we'll probably spend a little bit longer on because it is such a hot topic at the moment. And then creativity and teamwork. So how do we get better at working together as teams and be more creative? So there's 4 key areas on simplicity. Again, looking at, so this is kind of a little bit more from an IT manager's perspective, but having devices and then bringing new people into an organisation and making it easy to deploy those devices, easy to manage the devices, and making sure that users are always up to date with all the latest features and security updates, and then also proactive insights. Don't worry, I'm not going to labour too much on each of these. I don't want to get too technical, but just to cover off a couple of key points around deployment. So, again, in the past, IT managers had quite a humongous job in terms of re-imaging devices every time new employees joined an organisation or if there were any changes required. Now you can do things through a service called Autopilot, and in most cases this will suit, depending on the organisation and the size of the organisation, but you can basically take a device out of a box and set a user up and running straight away. I think we've probably all had that experience if you've joined a new company in the last couple of years and you spend those first couple of days looking through files and documents and trying to keep yourself busy while somebody sets up your laptop or your PC or whatever you're going to be working on. I think we've all had that experience. So again, this is going to help to alleviate that and ensure that people get up and running from day one in an organisation. Windows Analytics Upgrade Readiness, this is basically just allows or enables an IT manager to kind of look across their estate of devices and just to understand, how old are all their devices, how easy will it be to do an upgrade, and it just provides all that information for them. So again, it's just making their role a little bit easier. And then there's a Microsoft Store for Business, which, again, coming back to that first day in a new business, I suppose one of the things that we all look for to get up and running straight away is to make sure that we have access to all the applications that are used in that organisation. And this will enable IT to basically pull together all the relevant applications that you'll need to do your job into the one store, and you can basically just download them from the one place. So again, it just makes things a lot quicker, a lot more effective, and it gets employees up and running really, really quickly, and making them also feel a lot more part of the organisation from the first day. Easy to manage. So again, we're talking again about a mobile workforce, people who are out and about, travelling around the country or travelling internationally. So again, the IT manager needs to have, or the IT department needs to have the capability to manage those devices. So mobile device management systems are critical. Again, I mentioned a lot of data is moving to the cloud, so having the ability to manage data and users' data, whether it's sitting on your premises or whether it's in the cloud, so being able to run those two side by side. application management, and then dynamic management. So again, having that ability to dynamically apply a policy to a user. So for example, somebody loses their device, they leave it on the train or the bus. IT having that ability to either wipe the device or lock the device down so that nobody can access confidential corporate data. So all of these things are really helping to facilitate the mobile workforce. Get current and stay current. So with Windows 10, we introduced a new system you're probably familiar with. Maybe a show of hands in terms of operating systems that you're working on. Anybody here on Windows, for example? If we start with Windows? Good. Great, that's good to see. And just within Windows, would you be on Windows 7 or 10, or so say 7 first? Anybody still on 7? Yeah? Or earlier versions? No. Oh, okay. And then Windows 10? Phew, that's good. Good. So I suppose one of the key changes when we moved to Windows 10 was instead of having a big deployment and a big change, like so we go from Windows 7 to Windows 8 to Windows 10, what we found was feedback we were getting was that the deployment time was taking so long for organizations to do. For a large organization, it could take up to 2 years to do a deployment. So the whole thought process behind Windows 10 was to make that easier, but also be mindful of how things are changing and the world is changing so quickly. So with Windows 10, you get Windows 10, but there won't be a Windows 11, there won't be Windows 12. I've been saying that now for the last 3 years, and luckily there hasn't, so I can stand over it. But basically what's happening now is that there are regular updates to all Windows 10 users. So twice a year, new feature updates will be basically streamed out to all Windows 10 users. You have got options to take the download at a time that suits you. Again, we've had lots of feedback on this because it's a very new process for us, so we've made some changes to it since we launched it. But what it means is that twice a year you're going to get feature updates on the same operating system without having to do rigorous testing and, I suppose, testing is probably one of the key things, but ensuring that the operating system works with all your applications that you have. So it's a much simpler process. And then we'll continue to do the security updates every month. That's standard. But it's a big change, but it's very much a positive change. And so far things are certainly going in. The feedback we've been getting has been positive, apart from a couple of small changes in terms of I think when we first launched it, we were doing updates 3 times a year, and now we've brought it back to twice a year. So just a couple of small adjustments. But it just means that users are going to be always up to date. They're going to get the latest features. They're not stuck with something they bought 3 or 4 years ago. As we introduce new capabilities, they'll be rolled out to all existing users. The other thing around the simplicity is proactive insights. So again, just having that capability to again, this is probably more for IT managers. I don't know if we have any IT managers in the room. Any IT managers? No. Okay. Well, I won't spend too long talking about this then, because it's primarily it's basically providing tools for IT managers to get a full view of the health of their devices across an organisation. So it'll highlight if there's any issues, if there's any security issues, or if any updates need to be taken down. So just going to move on to security, and I suppose we've just passed the famous GDPR date last Friday, and I know this isn't specifically security; it's privacy and compliance, but I think the two are very much linked. And I think it was interesting over the past few months how Irish organisations were really ramping up to get their GDPR compliance in place. And I think one of the key learnings for us coming out of the GDPR process was that although it is a compliance and you need a compliance issue that you need to address, there are plenty of opportunities. So what we found was that as customers were going through their GDPR journey, as part of their compliance journey, there were certain security solutions that they needed to deploy. And by doing that, they were actually opening up new opportunities in other areas. So one of the messages that we used to talk to our customers about was not to think of GDPR as just a tax and a fear kind of hanging over the organisation with penalties and all the risks associated with it. Absolutely, you need to make sure that you have all of those, everything in place. But also think about the investment that you may have put into your business to become compliant. Think about does that open up new opportunities now in terms of how I'm able to, use the data that I'm collecting from customers, or, the fact that I'm more secure now? Does this now enable me to do more? So linking in then to security, again, from Microsoft's perspective, one of the things that we like to talk about and I suppose highlight is the fact that, I don't think any one organisation can claim to have cybersecurity boxed off and have every single solution in place. It's very much a partnership approach, and that's basically what Microsoft would apply to security. So working with partners, government agencies across the world to basically try and prevent cyber attacks. But as we all know, we need to assume breach. So when a cyber attack does occur, that we can react and respond to it as quickly as possible. You may have heard the statistic of it takes 200 days approximately for a cyber attack to get detected in an organisation. So a lot of damage can be done in those 200 days. So the sooner that you can detect that breach, the less damage it's going to create to your business. So just one point to mention here on the security graph is just the scale of the sensors that we have globally in terms of the data that we're picking up on a daily basis, whether that's through emails, whether it's through Windows updates. We're basically collecting a lot of intelligence that enables us to identify if there are any security breaches in the system. So it's all about speed and coming up with solutions quickly. And there's 4 key areas that we think are really important from a security perspective. And again, thinking back to the mobile worker. So obviously threat protection, which is everything to do with your malware and phishing attacks, etc. But the identity of your users, this is key. And then information in terms of information protection, so protecting your corporate data and then managing all of that. So threat protection, as I mentioned, is your malware and your phishing attacks. Just want to spend a little bit longer on the identity because again we're talking about the mobile user. So I suppose looking at things like biometrics, I think the days of passwords are coming to an end. We all use passwords for so many different logon applications that we use. And I think the more we can kind of come up with secure ways to manage this, the better. So biometrics is one area that we've looked at in terms of logging onto your device using facial recognition because there's nothing more secure than your own personal presence, but also it avoids having to from a security perspective, it's obviously a lot more secure. So you no longer have to remember your passwords, and also the risk of somebody else hacking in and getting your password is obviously eliminated. The other thing, information protection. So again, thinking again about the mobile user, they're working remotely. They want to be able to connect to their corporate network and access all of their corporate data. So again, it's just there are solutions in place there to kind of help organisations manage and split corporate data from personal data. So for example, if I was to attach a corporate document to a Hotmail account, I would be prevented from doing so. So there's various different policies that can be applied to protect both the organisation and the mobile user. And then we just have a management system to manage all of that. And then I suppose the final area just to think about in terms of mobile workers, so we're now talking about we've got them secure. We want to make sure that they have all the productivity tools available so that they can connect back to the office. So looking at things like, I'll just move on to the teamwork piece, which I think is probably one of the most relevant areas. And there are a number of different teamwork applications out there. You may be using Slack, you may be using Workplace from Facebook. Microsoft have a product called Teams. So basically they're places where you go from a Teams perspective, and you basically work within your team, you share your emails, you share your projects, but it's a one-stop shop where you can share everything related to the particular project that you're working on. And this really helps to facilitate much better teamwork. One of the things I find myself is, like somebody asked me the other day, they said, do you not find that if you're using a team site and you're using email, that you're basically duplicating? What I'm finding now is that the more we can get people to use Teams, my email inbox is going down, and instead I'm working more on Teams. And the big advantage of having all your emails and all your communications in the one place is that you can find them a lot easier. So everything related to that project is all sitting within the one area. So I think this is something we're going to see evolve a lot more. If people are working remotely, they want to be able to connect back with their teams, whether they're in the office or whether they're in another country. Having all that data, all the files, everything that you work on in the one place is going to make a significant difference. And then I suppose the other area as well is that we're seeing changes in terms of how we interact. Where digital pens are becoming more to the fore, particularly as I think initially the first digital pens that came to market, they were a little bit slow, there was latency. We're now beginning to see pens come into the market that literally are the same as writing with a pen or a pencil. So I think the more that it mimics natural writing, the more people are going to start using it. So all of these things just help people to interact more naturally with devices and helping them to get more done and helping them to get more done a lot quicker. So with that, you'll be pleased to hear this is the last slide. I think I'm still on time, but I suppose just the key messages just to leave you with in terms of that mobile workplace, 4 very important things that we just to consider and to think about. Look at the devices that you're using or your organisation is using. If they're more than 5 years old, it might be worth having a review of those just to see if they are providing the right level of security and productivity. You want to ensure that you've got the right levels of security built in. It's easy to deploy and manage the devices, and you're always up to date. That you're getting all the security updates, all the feature updates, and you're also getting insights about your users, about anything that's going on in your infrastructure that might create an issue or a challenge. So with that, so thank you.